Rivers Crossing. How are you? I've never had the honor of meeting you before. My name is Josh. I'm a creative arts pastor and one of the teaching pastors here at Rivers Crossing. There are a few Sundays that I love more at Rivers Crossing than a baptism Sunday. Amen. It is people going public with their faith. People saying, I just want everyone to know I'm a follower of Jesus, and I love that. There's 133 people that are going to make that decision today, which I think is absolutely incredible. And if you've never been baptized, you're a follower of Jesus, you've never been baptized, you want to take that step and go public with your faith, even if you were baptized as a kid or you were sprinkled with water as a kid. You're like, no, I'm an adult, I'm a follower of Jesus, I went through that step as an adult, and go public with your faith. We would love to celebrate with you. Your church family would love to celebrate with you. And while we're celebrating, I got two more quick things to celebrate with you. Just this past Wednesday was our fall kickoff for our junior high and senior high. There were over 600 teenagers on our campus on Wednesday. If you drove by and you thought, that's a party, it was a party. And 38 teenagers decided to follow Jesus at that party. Yeah. I swung by to pick my older two were at that, Micah and Malachi. I swung by to pick them up, and I ran into these two gentlemen. You don't have to dress up for fall kickoff. Most people were in like shorts and a t-shirt, but these two gentlemen, I mean, ladies, I don't know if they're available, but in a generation where I see all the boys wearing pajamas to school, snatch one of these two guys up. And then one other thing to celebrate with you is we just launched our fourth service, our 5 p.m. service a month ago. There were 542 people on campus last week at that service. And not because these services, first 3 services, were empty. These are all still full. There's people watching across the hall in the chapel this morning. So as soon as some of you left these first services to go to that service, maybe you're back today for a baptism, God immediately sent more people, and we've had record attendance last week. I'm not sure what we'll do today, but we're just in awe of what God's doing, and we know it's God, not us. So can I take 1 minute, and us as a church family, can we just thank God? I just want to pray for a second and just thank God. Yeah. Abba, we know it's you and not us, so we just acknowledge it. We just thank you for everything you've done, for trusting us with more people, for trusting us to share the hope of the gospel with more people. Thank you for sending us more people. We truly are for Cincy, and pray that you would just continue to send us more and more people that we could share the love of Jesus Christ. We pray that you would keep our hearts aligned with yours. We know in a moment that your presence could move on, and we don't want to do anything to cause that. So from the highest of leadership here to the volunteers here, every ministry, every volunteer, every person in this room, that you would keep our hearts aligned with yours, that we would stay on mission with you, keep us humble, and keep us thankful. In your name, amen. Well, thanks again for being here this morning. If you are watching this message this morning online or via video here in Mason, then you missed Paul's announcement last week where he said at 8:45 it's live. He was very excited about that rhyme, right? He was very excited. That was supposed to be funny. We're off to a great start today. If you're watching live, you're like, why is the video, or if you're watching on the video screen up here and you're wondering, why is it not live? So now that we're at 4 services, preaching 4 times is very hard. And Paul unpacked this very well last week. So if you're confused, go watch last week's message. He unpacked it really well. But the 2 main things are, as I said, 542 people at the 4th service. It's clear we might be heading towards a 5th service, and we'll do 10 services until we can build a space big enough to hold more people. We're not going to turn people away or say no. If God's sending more people, we're going to do more services. So we're going to keep adding them, and at some point, it becomes not sustainable. It seems like after 3 services, it becomes really hard to preach. There is adrenaline and serotonin, all these levels start to get depleted. I know a couple of weeks ago when I preached all 4 services, my goal was I'll go home and I'll take a nap between the noon service and the 5 p.m. service. But when I got home, my wife gently reminded me that I wake up from naps in a really bad mood. And I did not want to come to the 5 p.m. and just yell at people for half an hour. So I powered through, and after, Friday night gets a lot of my energy as my thoughts are just kind of on the message, and then Saturday night I kind of go into my office as my family goes to bed and pray and kind of process my message, and I'm usually fasting a little bit along the way, and then up about 4 o'clock on Sunday to go through it again, and then here, and then after all of that, I fell asleep on the couch at 7:45 p.m. So it just becomes a pattern for burnout, and we don't want to put our lead pastor through that. My daughter, Micah, on Friday, we had a little daddy-daughter date, and she has her ears pierced. She was getting another set of piercings, and she's terrified of needles. So I didn't tell her about it because I knew she wanted to get it done, But I knew if I told her, she would spend 2 weeks just processing the needle. So I just surprised her last minute. Like, we're walking into the tattoo parlor. That's when she found out we were getting her ears pierced. And she's there, and the artist that's piercing her ears is very kind and is talking to her. And, she takes this deep breath, and she breathes it out. She pierces the first ear, and Mike is like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And then she does the second ear, and Micah goes, oh, that was way worse. And even the tattoo artist was like, yeah, your body only has so much adrenaline and serotonin, and when it depletes, it takes a while to build back up. And if you're depleting it to get your ears pierced, you can build it back up pretty quickly, and you can get that kind of back. But her little analogy of, hey, the second ear always hurts worse for everybody because you've depleted some of that adrenaline, it just gets amplified when you preach. And if you deplete it to a certain level, you can't get it back unless you go through a period of like 3 or 6 months of just straight rest where you do nothing, where your body can kind of bring those levels back. And I don't want Paul to hit that point because I don't want to preach every week for 6 months while he recovers. So if you're watching via video today, that's why we're doing that. We do not have a video service. It'll bounce around, but at 8:45, it's live. Okay. We're going to go somewhere today. We're going to get excited. I hope you're saving your energy for where we go today. If you can't tell by our little set change, we're concluding our Chasing the Wind series today, our series on Ecclesiastes, and we're going to be talking about time, which I think is very critical. And there was a young boy. His friends called him Jack as a nickname. And Jack grew up in a Christian home, but he was very logical and very intellectual. So when his mom got sick when he was around 10 years old, he simply prayed, and he believed God would heal her because the Bible says that God heals. And when she wasn't healed and she died, Jack rejected his faith altogether and became a very outspoken atheist for a number of years. Jack referred to himself as a materialist, meaning he believed that matter and time and space all work together in perfect balance, and he was just a part of that. But as Jack got older and older, he kept running into the same problem, and it said he felt like a stranger in the universe. He always felt like there was something inside of him that was just calling him to more. And if he was merely just a collection of particles that were spun together by the universe, if the universe was the author of his life, then why did he always feel like a stranger when he was a part of the universe? And his inability to reconcile that is ultimately what led him to theism, and then as he explored some other parts of his faith, ultimately led him back to the faith of his childhood. He became a follower of Jesus. And I believe what he was wrestling with in that moment of there's something inside of me that's bigger than what I can see on the outside is exactly what Solomon is writing about in the book of Ecclesiastes when Solomon talks about time and eternity. Here's what Solomon says. There's some blue words here. If it's in blue, it's for. All right, so let's come with some energy this morning. He has made everything appropriate in its time. He has also put eternity in their hearts. But man cannot discover the work God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and enjoy the goodness of life. It is also the gift of God whenever anyone eats, drinks, and enjoys all his efforts. I know that all God does will last forever. There is no adding to it or taking from it. God works so that people will be in awe of him. Little Jack, struggling to reconcile the eternity that God had placed inside his heart with just being a collection of particles that the universe had placed together. And I don't know if you've ever felt like that, where you've just felt there's something more, right? Sometimes we refer to it as a purpose. Like I just can't quite lay hold to it. There's something different. I don't quite have it. There's something inside of me. Something's calling to me. Have you ever gone through that season of life where you felt like a stranger just in the life that you live? Or maybe you are chasing something and you're trying to grab hold of it, and you're like, if I could just get a hold of this thing, like I'll find my purpose. If I could just get a hold of this, but you can't quite grab it. Or maybe worse, at some point you've caught that and you're like, okay, perfect, and then you've discovered that your fulfillment was not inside of it. I want you to hear part one of my dear friend Josh Curtis of his testimony as he talks about this chase that he was going through in his life.
I had plans, of course my dream was, I think overall to be like an airline pilot. I wanted to be in the Air Force, maybe kind of the segue, into being an airline pilot. Yeah. Everybody always used to say like, man, this guy's got everything together. He's flying at 14, he's got, he's working multiple jobs, and, his head on straight. Yeah. And all this and build up a lot of pressure inside. And then I started to have to I had this pressure to live up to those expectations, I didn't want to let my parents down. I'm naturally a people pleaser, and all this time, I'm going to church, I feel like I'm checking all the boxes. I'm involved I was at a local church. I served, I did like the computer stuff, just different things. We went on mission trips, and I'm like, the stereotypical Christian, like I'm doing all the boxes, but nothing's like working out, like I'm not where I want to be, and like,
Yeah. So on the outside, people are looking at your life and they're like, man, this guy, it's like everything's falling together for him. Everything's all lined up. And on the inside, you have this heart inside that's just feeling like this isn't where I want to be. Do you feel like you were then chasing something there, like chasing expectations, not wanting to let people down, or?
Well, but it was like, I always kind of say, like, I felt like a dog chasing his tail. Like, I would get somewhere and then I'd always end up back, chasing my tail. Like I'd get ahead and then it was just like I was right back to square one. And I think the Lord was allowing me to chase my tail and like, hey, like, are you going to include me? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and that's finally it took me years to figure this out.
Yeah.
I know from my own life and the own situations I've been through that the chase never ends. It doesn't matter if you finally catch that thing you were chasing, there's always another level. Chase a promotion at work, and as soon as you get it, you see the next promotion, and you're like, oh, there's just always something that you're chasing. It never ends. It's never fully satisfied. Something else is always going to present itself in front of you to distract you, and God has placed eternity inside of our hearts to draw our focus to eternity instead of chasing this pile of stuff. Instead of chasing pleasure or wisdom or wealth or knowledge, God has placed eternity inside of our hearts to pull us a different direction. I have a couple things for you this morning why God has placed eternity inside of our hearts, and the first one is to draw us. God has placed eternity inside of our hearts to draw us. In 1 Kings we read that King Solomon, God comes to him in a dream and just says to him, whatever you want, ask it and I'll give it to you. And Solomon, in his humility, asks for wisdom to lead the people, and God gives it to him. And the author of 1 and 2 Kings, probably the prophet Jeremiah, refers to Solomon as the wisest man in the world, the wisest man to ever live. So when we get to Ecclesiastes and Solomon's sort of lament at all these things in life that he's been chasing that provide no fulfillment, here is what King Solomon writes about wisdom. When I applied my mind to know wisdom and to observe the activity that is done on the earth, even though one's eyes do not close in sleep day or night, I observed all the work of God and concluded that man is unable to discover the work that is done under the sun. Even though a man labors hard to explore it, he cannot find it. Even if the wise man claims to know it, he is unable to discover it. The wisest man in the world, frustrated that his wisdom is not enough to unlock eternity, to lay hold to this idea of eternity. He's trying to. He wants to understand how God does what God does. He wants to understand, how did God exist outside of time? How did he always exist? He's becoming frustrated that his wisdom is not enough to answer all these secrets. Even though he says, I'll stay awake all night and hold my eyes open, I still cannot understand exactly who God is. Because eternity has been placed inside of his heart. There's something greater than him that's been placed inside of him. So our boy, young Jack, he gives his life to Jesus as he grows up, and he becomes a philosopher, begins to argue the merits, the tenets of our faith just from a place of, virtue and validity, just from a place like this very philosophical place, still embracing the logical, intellectual nature that he grew up in. Then he begins to write books, and he writes some fiction books that became very popular. He doesn't write them underneath the nickname of his childhood, Jack. He writes them under his birth name, Clive Staples Lewis. Now you know why he went by Jack. Apologies to any Clive Staples that are in the room this morning. But C.S. Lewis writes a number of books. One of them is very interesting. It's called Screwtape Letters. If you've never read it, it's a fictional book, but it's written from the perspective of a senior-level demon who's training up his nephew in how to be a successful demon. And there's multiple spots in the book where he talks about using this chase to distract people. I wanted to read one of them to you this morning. This is Screwtape writing. We want a whole race perpetually in pursuit of the rainbow's end, never honest, nor kind, nor happy now, but always using as mere fuel wherewith to heap the altar of the future every real gift which is offered them in the present. Basically, we want mankind constantly chasing this pile of stuff instead of stopping to take stock of what's happening right now in the present or with looking to eternity. We want them consumed by this chase. And Solomon may not have been able to fully unpack the secrets to eternity, but he understood eternity just enough to give us 12 chapters on all this stuff being meaningless. God has placed eternity in our hearts to remind us. I'm going to pick up in chapter 9. What we just read from Solomon was the end of chapter 8. This is his very next thought after he's unpacking his frustration about eternity. This is his next thought. Indeed, I took all this to heart and explained it all. The righteous and the wise, their works are in God's hands. People don't know whether to expect love or hate. Everything lies ahead of them. Everything is the same for everyone. There is one fate. I'm going to do that one again. Everything is the same for everyone. There is one fate for the righteous and the wicked, for the good and the bad, for the clean and the unclean, for the one who sacrifices and the one who does not sacrifice. As it is for the good, so it is for the sinner. As for the one who takes an oath, so for the one who fears an oath. This is an evil, and all that is done under the sun. There is one fate for everyone. In addition, the hearts of people are full of evil, and madness is in their hearts while they live. After that, they go to the dead. What's the one fate that we're all heading towards? Death. The good, the bad, the saint, the sinner, the one who makes a promise, the one who breaks his promise, we're all heading to death. I read this section of scriptures. Different Bibles, they'll break blocks of scriptures inside a chapter up and give them like these little subheadings. One of the translations I read this in, the subheading was just, everybody dies. We're all heading to death. It's a fate that's been destined for all of us. This is a perspective that Solomon's trying to give us here in his writing, that we're all heading to death. And yet, God has placed eternity inside of our hearts. So how do we reconcile this eternity inside of our hearts when we're all just heading to death anyway? You know, if you go back and watch week 1 of this series, or if you were here and you remember, Paul unpacked this word hevel, which just kind of gives this deeper meaning to meaningless or futility that Solomon writes about. That everything is all this pile of stuff that we're chasing. It's not just meaningless, it's not even quite always tangible. You can almost touch it. It's more like a vapor or a smoke. It's kind of there, but not really there. Here's what Jesus' brother writes about this same idea, but about our lives in the book of James. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will travel to such and such a city and spend a year there and do business and make a profit. You don't even know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. For you are like smoke that appears for a little while, then vanishes. With factoring time and eternity into the perspective of all this stuff, we're the smoke. We're the vapor. We are here and we are gone. So in your time here, what are you chasing? Where are you spending your time? If you're building some sort of legacy that you want to leave to your kids or to your family, what legacy are you leaving? And are you leaving a legacy that's going to matter longer than 1 or maybe 2 generations? I want to show you a short video clip that presents the question a little bit differently with this idea of, with all of eternity in mind, does what you're chasing even matter? Check this out.
From the upcoming film True Crimes, please welcome 2-time Golden Globe winner, Jim Carrey.
Thank you. I am 2-time Golden Globe winner, Jim Carrey. You know, when I go to sleep at night, I'm not just a guy going to sleep. I'm 2-time Golden Globe winner, Jim Carrey, going to get some well-needed shut-eye. And when I dream, I don't just dream any old dream. No, sir. I dream about being 3-time Golden Globe winning actor Jim Carrey. Because then I would be enough. It would finally be true. And I could stop this terrible search for what I know ultimately won't fulfill me. But these are important, these awards. I don't want you to think that just because if you blew up our solar system alone, you wouldn't be able to find us or any of human history with the naked eye. But from our perspective, this is huge.
It's only funny because there's a lot of truth in it, right? Jim Carrey has this quote: "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer. We're the smoke. And when we're gone, we leave a vapor trail behind us. And if we don't live our lives embracing this eternity that God has placed in our hearts, if we don't live our lives from that perspective of eternity, then we're leaving nothing behind except a small vapor." God has placed eternity in our hearts to guide us. For me, this is where this whole series has been pointing. This brings the whole series into perspective for me. Solomon, he's in chapter 12. He's almost to the end of his writing. Here's what he has to say. "And the dust," that's us, "and the dust returns to the earth as it once was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Absolute futility," says the teacher. "Everything is futile. Our body returns to the earth, our spirit returns to God. And everything we chased in the short time period that they were united together is meaningless. Smoke." You know, it's common knowledge, like we invest our money for the future, right? And Paul even said last week, it's very true, like how you spend your money, it shows people, it shows everyone where your heart truly is. And the same is true about time. How you spend your time, you're investing it. You made a decision this morning to come here and spend some of your time here. This is an investment, especially if you brought kids here. You're investing time into the future. How do you spend most of your time? What are you truly investing in? I almost had you do this little exercise this morning, but I want you to do it this week. So this week when you're with your family around the dinner table, and if your family is never at the dinner table, then maybe go back and watch this message on time a couple times. When you're with your small group this week, maybe get together, maybe grab a couple of close friends, and then take out your phones together. If you got an iPhone, go to settings and look at screen time. If you got an Android, go to settings and look at digital well-being. See, what are the top 3-5 apps and how much time you're spending on those on a week? Where are you spending your time? Ask your kids. Look at where your kids. I asked a buddy of mine who is successful. He's in finance. He's got a good family. He's a believer. Feels like his life is in good balance. This isn't a teenager. It's somebody in their 40s or my age. And I just asked him out of curiosity to do this exercise with me this last weekend. And I was curious. I was like, I wonder how much time you spend on social media. He's the guy in the group chat that's always firing off memes. So I thought this would be a good guy to ask. And he goes, I'm a little embarrassed. I'm guessing I probably spend 45 minutes a day on social media. I was like, all right, well, let's look. So he pulled his phone out and looked. You know how much time a day? Again, successful, family, follower of Christ, all these things. You know how much time he's averaging per day on social media? 3.5 hours. So don't be surprised when you pull up screen time. Like, wow, these 15-minute chunks they're adding up quick. Maybe you're spending all your time on your phone chasing wealth. One of your stock apps is in your top. Maybe it's pleasure. It's just games that are all in your top. What are you truly spending your time chasing after? I'm going to shamelessly steal this analogy from Francis Chan. He's a great communicator and author, and he did this analogy many years ago, but I wanted to do it live instead of showing you a video. So imagine this rope is your existence, and it just goes on forever. We believe that we're eternal beings, right? So this is just gonna last forever. This carries on, it doubles back here, it goes way off the stage. Like, this is your whole existence. From now through all eternity, this is your life. And this little red part is your time on earth. And this gets all of our time and attention. And this gets nothing, even though this is what God has placed inside our hearts. We spend all of our time right here, making decisions for right here. We spend all of our money right here, maybe with this part we call retirement in mind. But we don't spend any money today with this in mind, leaving a real legacy. Or no time today, we're just chasing the next spot on the red line. You know, think about this whole series. We've spent 4 weeks talking about different things to chase. You know, what you're telling your kids to chase, what you're chasing after work for this success, for this status point right here you want to hit. When I hit this point on the red line, I'll be able to drive this car. People will finally view me a certain way when I get here. Maybe this much of eternity gets your perspective, the next generation, but all of this gets no investment, even though this is the part that God has placed inside of our hearts. I'm going to show you the second part of Josh Curtis's story. And we'll push the whole story out this week, and please go listen to it and let him unpack this medical journey that he went on and all the miracles that took place along his journey. But very briefly, Josh was told a couple years ago that he had a tumor in his brain. Came out of nowhere. It was very fast. And all the news he was getting from the doctors in the hospital was either a mix of very bad news or I don't know, the most unsettling an answer a doctor can give. And his wife leaves the room at some point, and he asks the doctor, how long do I have to live? A day, a week, a month? And the doctor just goes, I don't know. And all of a sudden, Josh realizes he's not here on the red line. He might be here. And it throws his perspective of time completely off. So now he's in the hospital, and he's thinking, well, who's going to walk my daughter down the aisle when she gets married? Who's going to teach my son to grow up and be a man? And who's going to take my spot laying next to my wife in bed? Things that he wasn't planning to think about. And then his perspective starts to shift even beyond that. Check out the second part of Josh's testimony.
If you could change, so you're, all right, for these many years I was chasing this career, this is what I chased. And then you get this huge moment in your life that basically hits reset on everything.
Yeah.
What do you pivot to chasing that? Or what would you say you're chasing now?
So now I think my heart is just after God, and it's just like, I'll preface it, there is nothing better than like the feeling to being used by God. But so I was like, completely paralyzed. They said, likely never walk again. And then, look at me now, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's miracles, and like even with my wife and like through our house, like, even though our kids really didn't know exactly what was going on, but even me and my wife, we were laughing and had joy, because I was like, you know what, enemy? I was like, I might not have much time left, but you're not going to rob me of my joy. And I was like, I'm going to live my rest of my days, in seeking him out. Even when I was I had to go to a rehab hospital for 30, a little over a month. I was actually there a little less than they thought. But I was like, God, just use me. The Lord was like, show me this lady that needed prayer. And she had just found out that she had to have like this major surgery again in her hip, and she's gonna have to start all over. And she was just, just kind of wrecked. I prayed for healing like over her, and a week later, we're going through the elevators, like she's coming in and I'm like coming out, because I was getting pushed around in a wheelchair. And I was like, hey, did you get your surgery date yet? And she's like, no. She's like, no, I'm actually getting discharged. She's like, oh, guess what? I don't have to have surgery anymore. And then like the doors closed, and that was it. And that's the last time I seen her. But it was just like, it was a God thing. And it's just, I went through this situation, and, he used me, and it was just that alone, like, it was just worth it. Like just being used by God, and that's what I chase after now.
Yeah, please go listen to that this week. It's a powerful story. You can clap for Josh. Which is interesting in his story. He says from he was a little kid, all he ever wanted to do was be a pilot. And he goes through this whole tragic, desperate scenario. Not gonna live, then not gonna walk. And about the only thing that he's lost in his life is the ability to fly. And has more joy in his life now than when he was chasing something that should be on this pile. Every decision he was making was for the next spot on the red. And then he finally embraced and realized, oh, there's eternity inside my heart. And he started chasing after all this instead. And that's when he found joy. So I'm going to close today. I want to talk to two completely different groups. The first one, you're a follower of Jesus. Like Josh, maybe you're going on missions trips. You're serving, you're checking the boxes, but something's off. There's a part of you that is chasing. The Bible even tells of there will come a point where people will stand before Jesus and say, we casted out demons in your name. And he's like, I don't even know who you are. So if you are chasing after something This morning, I want to give you the chance to just commit to setting that down. You know, in the 11th and 12th century, when the Christian Crusades were going across the world, and I'm not embracing anything that the Christian Crusades did, if you're familiar with what was happening. But as they were going through that, they were defeating armies, and then if you were a defeated army, the option was, hey, either surrender your life to Jesus or die. We got a lot of fake converts along the way, right? But they came up with this interesting tradition. As people were giving their life to Jesus, they were getting baptized. And as these soldiers were getting baptized, they would have all their armor on, and as they were walking out into the water, they would pull their sword out, and they would hold it above the water. And as they got baptized, they would only be lowered to their wrists, and they would keep their hands and their sword out of the water. And that was symbolizing, God, I give you every part of my life, except my sword. That's mine. And there's some of you that are following Jesus, and you're still trying to hold a piece of your life out of the water line. It's some wisdom, some goal you're trying to chase here. Maybe your wallet, you're on your tippy toes trying to keep your wallet. God, I trust you with my salvation, but not my money. Maybe it's some level of significance. Like Josh or a number of the people in the room or people that have shared their stories during this series. You're chasing something. You're chasing this perspective that people have of you. You want that so badly that you're holding that up here out of the water line. I'm going to give you a second to just confess that and ask God to help you pull that under the water with you. But to the other group, just people that don't know Jesus. And you might have come here this morning because you had a friend or family member getting baptized. You had no interest in the message. But now you're sitting there and you're relating to C.S. Lewis, who you're like, yep, something has been calling to me, and I don't know what it is, but I'm ready to figure it out. This is another quote from C.S. Lewis from the Screwtape Letters. Screwtape again writing, "The humans live in time, but our enemy, God, destines them to eternity. He therefore, I believe, wants them to attend chiefly to two things, to eternity itself, and to that point of time which they call the present." You have the opportunity in the present, right now, today, to make a decision that will impact you for eternity. And it matters, because this is Solomon's closing thoughts when he finishes out Ecclesiastes. "But beyond these, my son, be warned. There is no end to the making of many books, and much study wearies the body. When all has been heard, the conclusion of the matter is, fear God and keep his commands, because this is for all humanity. For God will bring every act to judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or evil." You guys would bow your head and close your eyes with me. I promise we won't be here long. But if you're in that first group, you're chasing something and you know it. I'm not even going to drag this out. I'm just going to give you an opportunity to say, yep, I would like some prayer, and put your hand in the air. Awesome. Everyone's got their eyes closed. We got some staff that's looking around. I just want to acknowledge it and pray for it. Most importantly, God saw your hand go up. You can put them down. That's the first step, is just acknowledging to God, something has a piece of my heart, and I would love for you to help me pull that below the water line. The second group, you just don't know Jesus. I'm going to give you an opportunity to make a decision right now to follow him. We believe it is simple. It's the ABCs of salvation. It's confessing that you are a sinner, understanding that there's something bigger than you that you need to be a part of, admitting I'm a sinner, believing that Jesus died for you, confessing your sins. If you want Jesus to become the Lord of your life, if you want to make a decision right now that will impact you for eternity, so that you can impact your kids and your kids' kids and your great-great-great-great-grandkids, if you want to leave a legacy that's more than vapor, I want to give you the opportunity to follow Jesus. So I'm going to pray. You can quickly pray the words after me, but it's not the words that I'm praying. There's no special prayer that you have to pray. It's just the believing in your heart. So I would like to pray for you. And you can pray your prayer, or you can echo the words that I'm praying. God, I pray that you would draw them into you this morning. That people that walked in this morning with no expectation are now finding themselves face to face with you, with a decision that matters, the most important decision that any of us have ever made in our entire lives. I ask that you would just fill them with your love, that they would feel your warmth right now, Father. And if you've been open and you've been praying that version and just asking God, just ask him, will you come into my heart? I want to be a follower of you. Then after that, ask God to fill you with your spirit, fill you with his spirit. Everyone still has their eyes closed and their head bowed, but we always give this opportunity for people to acknowledge that they made a decision to follow Jesus. Not because we're going to track numbers, which we do, but because the Bible is very clear that if you deny Jesus, he will deny you, but if you acknowledge him, he will acknowledge you. And we feel like this is the best first place in a room that's going to erupt in applause. This is the best first place to say, yep, I just became a follower of Jesus. So if that's you, if you just gave your life to Christ, in the count to 3, just throw your hand up. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Awesome. Pray that God would seal that decision in your heart for eternity, and that you would leave a legacy to your family that would be more than just smoke or vapor. God, we thank you for new life in Christ. Thank you for a beautiful Sunday. I ask that you would capture the heart of those that are chasing. Capture their hearts. Let them fall in love with you. That struggle that they have, that they would finally let go of that and realize the joy and peace that comes with releasing that. For those that made a decision to follow you this morning, I pray that you would seal that they would mark this day down. This was the day that I decided to make a decision in my life that would have an impact for eternity. We praise you, Father. In your name, amen. If you did make a decision to follow Jesus this morning, in the back of our lobby, we have our VIP room. And in our VIP room, we have these books, these little kits, these new believer kits. There's a Bible in here and some other tools in here for you. We just want to help you get your journey started. A lot of people in this room started right here with this, and people are just going to thank you and give you a high five and say congratulations if they see you walking around with one of these. So don't leave until you grab one of these. And then, as you know, we can only do stuff like this or other things because of your generosity. So if you're partnering with us with your giving, if you've made that decision to give today for an eternity impact, there's different ways to give. You can see those on the screen behind me. And then, as with every service, we always have prayer partners down front. It is their honor to pray with you. So don't leave church without getting prayer if you need prayer. If you're in the balcony, come on down. They would love to wait and then pray with you. And then lastly, as I said, this is our final week of Chasing the Wind. We have a new series kicking off next week called Lens of the Gospel. Can't wait to see you back. Have an amazing week.